Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Mathieu. Welcome.
Hey, Eric.
How's everything going in Champagne?
Wonderful. Sunny and warm and with a glass of champagne in hand. It couldn't be better.
Well, it's great to be back with you again. It's a year later, and quite a year it's been. How's it been in the last year in Champagne with all the excitement, so to speak?
It's been unexpected, as you say. We're very thankful that none of our families or our team members have been badly ill, so that's the most important thing. We've gone through an amazing harvest. 2020 is going to be one of the great vintage. And on the business front, as you know, we have done well, a lot better than the average and a lot better than we would have expected. And that's thanks to you guys and the many others that have followed the brand from restaurants to their own home. And they've managed to keep some bubbles in their glass. So everybody's happy.
No, it's been a really challenging year with its ups and downs, and certainly, all in all, it's been a great success. And we're just thrilled to be able to represent Billecart-Salmon here in California and Hawaii. And this is much earlier than we normally do it. As you know, we've struggled with logistics all year long, so we've moved our holiday pre-sale up about almost 2 months earlier than previous years, just so that we can make sure that we get the product here for the holidays. And speaking of that, the two sort of highlights of our holiday offer, I mean, the Founders Cuvées are always a highlight, but this year we have two amazing Founders Cuvées. We have the Nicolas François Billecart 2007, and we have the Elisabeth Salmon 2008. So I was hoping that today you could just give us a nice overview and teach us a little bit more about those two amazing cuvées.
Sure, with great pleasure. So we'll talk about some of the introduction of our house. For those of you that were there last year, history hasn't changed much, but we will cover some of the basics. And then we'll go and talk about the cuvées that Eric mentioned, Elisabeth Salmon 2008 and Nicolas François 2007. So going back to the basics, we are still very much a family-owned and run champagne estate, one of the very last few, founded in 1818 by my great-great-great-great-grandfather, gentleman on the left called Nicolas François Billecart, and that's where the name comes from. And the lady in the middle is Elisabeth Salmon, the name of our prestige Rosé. For completeness, the name of the gentleman on the right-hand side is Louis Salmon, and Louis Salmon is also the name of our prestige Blanc de Blanc. Three young, enthusiastic landowners, merchants that we owe everything to, otherwise we wouldn't be there and there wouldn't be such a thing as Billecart-Salmon. So that's really the family link is key there. In terms of where the estate is located, we're right in the heart of where the Premier and Grand Cru are. The name of the village is a village called Mareuil-sur-Aille, which is a few miles away from Épernay. You can see some pretty pictures there. And it's actually, the sky is about the same blue as the one in the picture today. We've always stayed true to our home. So this is a village where our families have been in since the 16th century. And we've basically developed the estate around the house of Nicolas François and Elisabeth Salmon. So we've always stayed close and true to our land, because that's one of the most essential element in the quality of Billecart-Salmon. How we do that 200 years later is obviously the family management, which I represent, but we also have a committee, a tasting committee, where 3 generations of my family sit. So 5th, 6th, and 7th. I'm 7th. And that plus a team of some great professionals, we taste every single base wine. So that's every single parcels or cru. We have to agree on every blend. We have to agree on how much we age the wine. We have to agree on the dosage, and we have to agree whether we feel the wine is ready to be shipped to you or not. So it's a very artisanal approach that we've managed to scale up, where our palate is at the center of all of that. We don't make technical sheets. We make great wines. And for wine to be considered great, well, first of all, we have to be satisfied that the wine is worthy of carrying our family name, and even more so when it's a prestige cuvée like the one we are going to talk about today. Clément, I think you can move to the next one. Eric asked me to tell you a little more about the crew we have. General perspective, Billecart is, in terms of where our grapes come from, first, as I said, we work 20 kilometer radius around Marais-sur-Ailly, so you can see the golden circle there where Marais is in the middle. About a third of the land we own, a bit more than a third we run, so that's like leases agreement or similar, where we run, we work the vines of other people's land, but fundamentally it's the same amount of control. And then we have about a small third where we purchase on long-term supply contracts, which is very traditional to what you get in Champagne, mainly with families, only with families that typically we've been working with for generations. Billecart, Champagne is a big region, but Billecart has got to work in the heart of it, as I mentioned. There are three sub-regions that are important: Vallée de Marne, Montagne de Reims, and Côte des Blancs. For the two cuvées we are going to talk about today, it's really Montagne de Reims and Côte des Blancs that are relevant, because there is no Meunier where we get the grapes from Vallée de Marne. So the villages that are important there for the Pinot Noir is our own village, Marais-sur-Ailly, which is the village next door. And then the one further on the top right, so Verzenay, Verzy, Ambonnay, Bouzy are very important, and that's where we get some of our very best Pinot Noir, which are included in both the Nicolas François blend and the Elisabeth Salmon blend. For the Chardonnay, you have to look towards the bottom of the chart, where we source our grapes from Côte des Blancs, the white hill would be the translation. And in there are four Grand Cru villages that are important for Billecart: Chouilly, Cramant, Avise, and Le Mesnil-sur-Roger. You see, if you look at the golden circle, these villages are just under or even crossed under that golden circle. So the villages are important for many of the blends of Billecart, but particularly relevant for the two we are talking about today. If you've got questions about those, then we can cover them. In terms of viticulture, we've long had a long-term sustainable vision for our vines. Some of them are worked organically, but the main certification we use is what we call sustainable viticulture in Champagne. Call it sustainable farming, where we are very restricted on what we can do, and we are very happy to do that. So that means no weed killers. That means a raft of different synthetic products you can't use, and ensures that the vines are looked after with the ambition for them to do not good wines only 1 year, or good grapes only 1 year, but good grapes for years and decades ahead. That the fact that we are a family business really gives us that long-term vision. You know, it is my ambition to pass on the company to the 8th generation in a better shape that I found, and I found it in great shape. So that's high expectations. But for that, you absolutely must have long-term vision, and the vineyards component is an essential part of that. In terms of vinification method, you know, it's absolutely critical to have amazing grapes coming from the best cru, but then you have to make them into wine. And for that, we use three main vehicles to make the wine: stainless steel tanks, as you can see in the picture, small Burgundian oak barrels, and large barrels. One of the signature of Billecart-Salmon in the wines is finesse, elegance, and balance. A lot of where that comes from is down to how we respect the cold at all stages through the process. So it can be cold settling, but the most important element is the cold fermentation. So we go through a very slow process to transform sugar into alcohol, which is a process to make wine. So we make that at around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and the process takes about 3 weeks instead of 2 to 3 days. And that gives us that finesse, that freshness that you don't get when you work quickly. We do that in stainless steel, as you can tell, but very important for these two cuvées is we also do it in the small or large barrels. It's not as precise as it is in the stainless steel, But you can see here we have over 400 Burgundian oak barrels. They're on average over 15 years old. Why is that important? Other than me saying that sounds very old, it's really important because we don't want our wines to be oaky, but we want the wine to gain from oxidation, and the wood and the oak in particular is great for that. It gives wine some further body and depth, which we use. It can be 100% for special cuvées like the Brut sous Bois, but in the case of our top cuvées like Nicolas, François, Elisabeth Salmon, it's a smaller proportion. We'll come back to that. And the last element when you make exceptional wine is, so you have the great people, you have the great vineyards, the great approach to work that vineyard. Now you've vinified it, you need time. Amazing wines need time. If you think about red wines, nobody would think about drinking a Grand Cru red wine in 2 years old. Same principle with champagne. And the aging in our cellar, the very slow aging in our 17th and 19th century cellars, give time for the wine to develop its complexity. The connection with the lees gives that additional depth, what makes, from a normal champagne to the very best we have. And at Billecart, we have a long aging policy that's from the Brut Reserve all the way, and obviously that the Prestige Cuvée are no exception. So, I'm showing you Nicolas, François 07 and Elisabeth 08. They are current releases, where for those of you that know the market and watch a little bit what other houses do, they tend to release earlier. We are, as standard, they are almost late releases if you compare with some others. So, and that's really one of the key, again, of making sure that whoever is going to open that bottle of Billecart-Salmon has a great time. The Cuvée we'll present today has immense aging potential. So they will age further, another 10, 20, 30 years. But as at today, they are ready. So for whoever who are tasting it or selling it, you can be confident that they can have a great time from today, which is quite rare when you look at the universe of super premium wines. So that's it about the philosophy. And if there are questions, I'm very happy to take them. Let's talk a little bit about the two guests of honors of today. The one that Eric selected is that Cuvée Nicolas François 2007. You would have picked up in the introduction that Nicolas François is the name of one of our founders, so he's the name of my great-great-great-grandfather, and he's the kind of the original of our Prestige Cuvées, our oldest standing Prestige Cuvée, the one that won Champagne of the Millennium with vintage 59 and 61. So that's one of the well-kept secret champagne myth, put it that way. So it's a very well known within the circle of connoisseurs. The blend hasn't changed much over the centuries. It's always on around 60% Pinot Noir, 40% Chardonnay. Pinot Noir from Montagne de Reims, the cru I gave you earlier. 40% Chardonnay from Côte des Blancs, the cru I gave you earlier. Very high concentration of Grand Cru and Premier Cru. The only Premier Cru there is Marais-sur-Aille, our own village, which we consider it as a Grand Cru. So if you accept that Marais-sur-Aille is a Grand Cru, and frankly, the Celosses, Roederer and others people in the know that Marais is a Grand Cru, then it is 100%. But for accuracy, we've put 79% Grand Cru, 21% Premier Cru being Marais. I mentioned to you the percentage vinified in barrels. In this case is 15%. Enough to give the wine the additional depth and complexity, not again wanting to make it overly oaky. 07 is a great vintage at Billecart. We have made the 3 Prestige Cuvées in that year, which is a very rare occurrence. I think the last time it happened was in the 1980s. We think that's a massively underrated vintage. It has already, you see, if you look at the scores, these are not scores from small vintages, and we're very confident that 07 will do great. It shares many of the similarities with 1995.
Mathieu, just a quick question for you. So we were tremendously successful last year with the 2006 vintage of Nicolas François-Billecart. So is there any point of difference between the two? I mean, what would you point out in comparison?
In terms of the way it is made, there are no great differences, Eric. However, as it is a vintage champagne, single year, as you know, the year expresses itself differently. 2006 is quite a rich, summery wine, quite broad, which I think made it feel more mature than it really was. There's nothing wrong with that, but at your first sip, you were getting a mouthful of richness. 07 is not quite like that. It's more mineral, I would say more approachable for the aperitif, for example. It has more tension. Particularly the Chardonnays, I think, were great in that year. So you get more acidic backbone. I would say its longevity is greater than 06. I mean, it's, we are confident about 06, but can 06 do 30 years? I'm not sure. Where 07 has that tension. So I think if you're more into the fresher type of champagne in the prestige category, 07 will be more your thing. If you want the richer style, 06 is more your thing. However, I mean, we are talking about nuances here. This is still Nicolas François. It's still similar parcels. It's a quasi-identical blend. The dosage has been brought down a little bit. That one is 6 grams a liter, so that's technically extra brut. So it's more the year. 07, whilst they are 1 year apart, is very different in terms of profile than 06. But both great wines.
Nice.
The disgorgement date is now on the back label, so that one would have been bottled in 08, and that mine is disgorged in July 19. So that's 11 years in the bottle, plus another 2 after that. So a great one. I think if we are talking winter, so over holidays, a great one for food, aperitif plus, on the poultry with mushrooms and all of that stuff. Nicolas François does great at this. It has the dominance of Pinot Noir, give that warmth and richness to the wine, particularly if you drink it in bigger glasses, and you let it breathe a little bit. It will really reward you, and we're proud of all of our wines. But Nicolas François, I've said it before, is the one that is the cuvée that made me fall in love with champagne. It's true. It wasn't 2007. It happened a few years ago. But I think it's a very classic top end cuvées, and it's in many ways the very best, and it should be in the founders range, the very best of Billecart know-how. You have different blend of 2 different cépages, you have 2 different vinification method, you have the long aging. So in many ways, it's a capsule of the very best we can do. That's Nicolas François. Are there any questions? No? But carry on. On the more summery style, and the one therefore is quite warm here, you gave me the opportunity, Eric, to pour myself a little glass of that, so I didn't say no. I present to you the queen of Champagne Rosé. So I think in California more than in many places, that we're pretty good at making rosé. The Brut Rosé has a popular taste. I often say the Brut Rosé is a princess of rosé. It's very approachable, it's fruity, it's fun. Elisabeth-Salmon is a queen. So it's a serious version of the Brut Rosé. It is the very best of what we can do in rosé, which I think says quite a lot. Again, a very high concentrations of Grand Cru and Premier Cru, 76% Grand Cru, 24% Premier Cru. The Premier Cru is only Marais. So if you accept my vision that Marais is a Grand Cru of heart, then it should be 100. The blend is a slight variation of what we've done historically. 55% Pinot Noir from Montagne de Reims, Grande Vallée de la Marne is Marais-sur-Aï and Aï, and 45% Chardonnay Côte des Blancs. So in the same regions that I talked about at the beginning. A higher proportion of red wine than you get in our Brut Rosé. So it's 9%, where our Brut Rosé would be around 7%, largely because this has been bottled in 2009. So this has spent 13 years in the bottle. We knew that, and you can see, well, maybe you can see that we needed to have greater concentration for the color to hold itself over such a long period of time. No, I can't emphasize enough, we're one of our last houses to release our 08s. So it's a very rare opportunity for people that want to get the very best in a very great year to taste it with our rosé know-how. For the very first time, we have included a proportion of wines fermented and matured in the barrels that I showed you earlier. In that case, is 17%. Why? I said to you, the committee tastes everything blind. Well, ultimately, we didn't know. There was not an ambition to include the wines vinified in the barrels. However, in 2008, the Pinot Noir were quite mineral. And 08 is quite a lean, mineral, and fresh year. And the barrels are a way of getting additional complexity and depth in that. So that's simply the reason we did it. Again, 11 years on the lease. That one was disgorged in 19, so 2 years ago. You're at the pinnacle of what rosé can be, because yes, it has the fruitiness that only a rosé can offer. But it has additional layers of complexity and greatness than the Brut Rosé. You know, the Brut Rosé plays on the aromas of little red fruits and citrus. That's the main parameters of Brut Rosé. That's why people love it. Where Elisabeth-Salmon weight is, even today, at least on 3 different layers of flavors. Little dark fruits, so cassis, blackcurrant type register. Patisserie and melted butter, so fruit tart. And which is always a great hint and a sign of an amazing wine, you're starting to get the hint of the spices, saffron, pepper, that kind of thing. So, of course, aperitif for kings and queens. Food, yes, please. So, the king prawns on the barbecue, even a lamb cutlet food, that can easily cope. Aging potential is immense in bottle for sure. So we're looking, 10, 20 years, no problem. For the very first time, we've released some magnums, which are collector's item. So for the people that are looking to age, their wines for 20, 30 to 40 years, then magnums is always a safer bet. And for the very first time in our history, they will be able to get that on an Elisabeth Cuvée.
Mathieu, I had the opportunity to taste a couple of weeks ago, the 2008. And, what really impressed me about it was just this kind of crunchy minerality that kind of pushed all the way through the palate. You could feel this sort of concentration of flavor, but light, elegant, refined, and just this amazing minerality to the wine. Honestly, I think it was the most spectacular rosé champagne that I've ever tasted.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah.
There's a question there. Yes, it's a good point, Clément. Sorry, I forgot. I told you about the 9% of Pinot Noir, which is vinified as red wine. This is a blend rosé, similar technique to what we do with our Brut Rosé. But Clément is quite right. For this particular year, we only use 1 parcel of vine for making the red wine. And this parcel is a very old parcels of vines. They are now around 80 years old in our own village of Marais-sur-Haye. That parcel is called Val-au-Froid. It's a south-facing parcel. They give very small grapes, but always grapes that give us great concentration of flavors, which we make a red wine out of it, which is very deep. We vinify it with as little tannins as possible because we don't want to make a big punchy wine. But it's one of the key of its graceness. It's a combination of small things, but for sure, if you want to make an exceptional champagne rosé, you must be able to make an exceptional red wine. Otherwise, you have at least one part of the equation which is falling over. So that's definitely part of our know-how.
One thing also that I wanted to touch on that you mentioned here is that this is the first time that is this the first time ever this has been in magnums, Elisabeth-Salmon?
It's definitely the first time we're selling it.
Yeah, and they're very limited, and so it's just it's a great opportunity, like you said, for somebody who wants a champagne that's going to last. We also, of course, have magnums of the Nicolas François Billecart 2007 as well.
Yeah, which frankly, for those looking to age, I mean, it's the same principle we tell people. if you have the luxury of order, or if you're able to have more than one, which in itself is a luxury to be able to taste one bottle. So don't get me wrong. But if you enter that kind of mindset and you want to do it, we always advise if you buy yourself a case, then that's kind of 2 to drink in the next 2-3 years. Lay down some others and drink the others in, I don't know, in 7 to 8 years, and the other ones in 10 to 15. And when you've done that at least once, you starting to understand the maturity profile that suits you best for your own personal taste. You know, we have put a vintage map together, which is available on our website, to give you an idea of how each of the vintages are evolving. Now, 07 is at the start of its journey, but I think there is a lot for people looking to educate their palate and make sure they have wines that hit the right spot for them, because this is what it's all about. We all have different tastes. Eric, you have your expectation when you expect your wines to be at the peak, and I have a different one, and that's absolutely fine. That's life. But that's really the best one. The mags, you know, if you're buying something for your children, or you're looking to make I hate the thing investment, but something that will reward you in 10, 20 or 30 years, it's always safer.
No, amazing wines. I don't know if you have anything else to say, Mathieu, but these are a couple amazing wines that we're definitely going to sell out before they arrive. And we're looking forward to a great holiday pre-sale.
Well, the only thing I want to say is a big thank you to you and the team. I mean, we speak to Eric regularly to make sure everybody hears it. We are pleased and proud of the partnership we have with Chambers. We're very happy that you guys represent it and place Billecart in the right places, because we know we never have enough quantities. So it's about doing it with the right people. And I think we share many of the values of that. We understand wine, we understand each other. And that's amazing. That's what we thrive for, because making great wines end up in the wrong places, frankly, you've missed something. So you guys are doing great. And I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to represent such an amazing maison here in California and Hawaii. So it must be close to dinner time there. It's
Elisabeth-Salmon time.
It's Elisabeth-Salmon time. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Mathieu. Hopefully I'll see you before a year. But in any case, thank you so much for all your support.
Let's hope so. See you. Thank you all. See you soon.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.